Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who, a Big Finish video. Yes, in today's Doctor Who Big Finish video I'll be reviewing this, Cry of the Vultriss. Yes, the first Sixth Doctor story in the trilogy of Sixth Doctor adventures for 2020, containing Cry of the Vultriss, the Scorched Earth and the Lovecraft invasion. Yes, now this is quite an exciting release because I am a massive Ice Warrior fan, and obviously this features the Ice Warriors. And I recently reviewed Red Dawn, their first Big Finish story, in part of celebration of this release. So if you haven't checked out that review, I'll leave a little card thing there and a link in the description below to my Big Finish reviewing playlist, so you can check out all the other Big Finish content when I produce. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to look how this is presented, then I'll go into my thoughts on the actual story itself. So let's begin the Cry of the Vultriss review. So taking a look at the presentation for the Cry of the Vultriss, we have the Empress Vextia. We have one of two Ice Lords will feature within the story. We have the Sixth Doctor there holding a Chronon crystal. The lovely sort of sky sort of castle of the Vultriss there, which is really brilliant with the sort of Ice Warrior ship. We have Queen Sky, Constance, Flip with a lovely sort of crystal motif on the cover, which is very prominent in the actual story. So yeah, really good cover. I really do like this cover. The side of the release and the back release. So if you want to know more about the story, then do feel free to pause. And we have the cast list there, and the total running time being 120 minutes. So taking a look at the leaflet now, we have production credits for the actual release, then we have advertisement for Doctor Who magazine, then a lovely cast photo, and then the next instalment in the Sixth Doctor trilogy, Doctor Who Scorched Earth. And then we have the reversible cover, so if you want to have the Sixth Doctor logo, then you can. And the disc art is exactly the same for both discs. So after 2 years we are reunited with the Sixth Doctor, Flip and Constance, with us having a solo Sixth Doctor trilogy, and then last year we saw the return of Perry in the main range. Both brilliant trilogies, so I highly recommend those trilogies. So is Cry of the Vultriss a triumphant return for this TARDIS team? Absolutely. This story really does utilise each of them, as this story really shows how well they work and why they're a brilliant TARDIS team. Darren Jones not only did a brilliant job with this TARDIS team, but with the rich supporting characters, from expanding on the Ice Warriors history to the marvellous world building, showing why audio is a great medium for Doctor Who. Part 1. Now the story itself reminds me very much of the Paladin stories, with the Vultriss about to establish with alien contact for the first time in the Vultriss's history, so no surprise what aliens are going to arrive on Sigia Rima. So we have this rather grand start with Queen Sky addressing her people, but all is not well, as there is unrest as the rebels attack who are against the aliens' arrival. So it is great within the first 5 minutes you have the sort of political landscape of Sigia Rima. We do have a nice little callback to the end of Static and a beautiful scene between Doctor and Constance. Now you don't need to have listened to Static to enjoy this story, it's just a nice little thread to link the Sixth Doctor, Flip and Constance stories all together. So that was a nice little touch really. But things soon changes as the TARDIS is ejected from the vortex, causing the TARDIS to crash, leading to some excellent sound design as the TARDIS hurtles through the rocky mountainous landscape. And I guess that's another link to sort of Paladin, with us having this sort of extravagant castle on a mountainside. So the Doctor and crew investigate why the TARDIS was ejected out of the vortex, with us learning of the wildlife on this planet, from the deadly Avasors to the Kelpin, these giant dodo creatures, what are basically the Vultriss's equivalent to a horse. So after a tense attack on the mountains from the Avasors, Constance gets separated, with her being with the rebels and the Doctor and Flip being with Queen Sky. So that's a great way of further expanding on the world, so we get both sides of the political climate, with us learning, that the Vultriss can't fly. And we learn of these stations are being attacked and what are the significance of these stations, why are they so important, and it all leads to a very traditional Doctor Who cliffhanger. Part 2. The Ice Warriors arrive on their diplomatic mission, with them having a colony on the other side of the galaxy, as we learn of Mars, with the Ice Warriors being scattered all over the place, and with this being a peaceful time in their history. So to celebrate the dawn of a new age for the Vultriss, we have a feast leading to a fun scene with the Doctor and Flip, with us learning more about the Vultriss's culture and how Sky became queen, with her having the cry, which has the power to kill, because she is the fabled one, which only happens in every, I think sort of every 500 years or something like that. But things are getting more tense as Station 2 is attacked, causing tremors and the crystal being taken, with the rebels having an ultimatum involving Constance, with us learning about the rebels serving the previous Queen Jabul, who was dethroned as Sky is the fabled one as she has the cry. So we learn, what are the Ice Warriors plotting, what are the Vultriss concealing, as we learn why the stations are so important on Sigurima, which leads to a very good twist, as it explains why the TARDIS crash landed, with this being sort of a rip in the space-time continuum, with the origins of that, which is rather interesting, all leading to a real cliffhanger. Part 3, now the first half is very much establishing the world and the characters, so the second half is where we get more of the action-based stuff as the Ice Warriors attack the rebel base, which creates some great imagery with the Ice Warriors jumping out of the ship. And the music is just absolutely fantastic for this sequence, because it just really makes the story feel a bit more grand and action-packed, so it really does match the sort of tone of the scene, which is brilliant. With the Ice Warriors being described as tanks, which is just brilliant because they are these sort of heavily armoured creatures. So I absolutely love that. We learn more about their sort of art, honour, culture and nobility. And we learn who's been taking the crystals. We learn of the implications of the rip in the space-time continuum as chaos is unleashed, as it's very much a race against time to find the crystals and put them back to the stations, as we learn of the Ice Warriors' plan about a new Martian empire. And we do have this rather surprising twist involving the Ice Warriors, with us getting some quite grim imagery to match that. With us having a very traditional cliffhanger. Part 4, we have a very interesting resolution to the cliffhanger, as things are really heating up on Sigurima as it's crumbling away, as the Doctor and crew are trying to return the crystals, and we have a very good twist involving Queen Sky. So this part is incredibly tense as the rip is about to engulf the planet, and Vextir's plan is in full operation, with the stations being damaged, so the Doctor has to try and repair them before the apocalypse really. Which leads to a really beautiful scene between the Doctor and Constance, with this story having a rather hopeful ending for the Vultriss. So moving on to characters now, let's start with the Sixth Doctor himself, Colin Baker. Another superb performance by Colin Baker, with him being this charming diplomat to the cunning detective, with him being extremely worried and concerned by the rip, leading to this great sense of urgency. But we do have the more softer side, with him telling how fond he is of Constance, with him sort of showing his belief in her, with him sort of being, we get this lovely moment where he's just astounded by the Vultriss architecture, but we do have the classic Sixth Doctor temper in there as well. So Constance Clark, played by Miranda Rayson, a really brilliant performance, as this is a fantastic story for Constance, as we get this nice little callback to Static, which you don't need to listen to Static to understand this story. It's just a good way of making this TARDIS team's adventures flow. We have her constant stiff upper lip, with her being quite calm and collected at the face of danger, taking everything in her stride, with her being very resourceful. We learn more about her family and having a beautiful speech about faith and linking it back to her time period of World War II. Flip, Lisa Greenwood, the lovable Flip, an excellent performance by Lisa Greenwood. Flip is a great addition to this story. I love how, despite having previous adventures, she still has that sense of wonder and awe about seeing alien species, and her just loving every second of it, and is just ready to dive into the culture. We have the sort of classic Flip one-liners and sort of pop culture references. And in part 3, Flip just has a beautiful speech, how she's determined to make a difference, and I think that is a really good moment for Flip within this story. Queen Sky, played by Natasha Cowley, a really good performance. She's a character who's on edge and nervous about the aliens, but must keep a strong appearance, due to there being trouble and unrest caused by the rebels, but remained optimistic and determined to lead and make the Vultriss fly once again. So, Queen Sky is a really good character within this story. Quite a torn character, actually. Vextir, played by Adele Lynch, a really solid performance playing the Empress, as we learn of her family ancestry, with her being related to Lord Slar from the Seeds of Death. She's very curious and suspicious of the Doctor, with her having that sort of classic Ice Warrior nobility, but she's rather devious and cunning and wants to restore Mars to its former glory. Queen Jabul, played by Caroline Lowry, a good performance playing this bitter, power-hungry queen who wants to take her throne back from Sky, and she's against aliens on her planet, so she's very much against progress, so it's quite nice to have that sort of different side to the Vultriss, which is really nice to have that sort of different political landscape to feature within this story. So what are my overall thoughts on Cry of the Vultriss? Well, it is a wonderfully rich story. Darren Jones creates a fascinating world full of culture and characters full of depth. This story really shows why the Sixth Doctor, Constance and Flip make an excellent TARDIS team. A story full of twists and turns. The Ice Warriors are a brilliant inclusion because you never know where they stand. proving why they're one of the more interesting Doctor Who monsters, expanding on their history, with it just being an incredibly tense listen. The story takes its time to plot everything, leading to a thrilling final part. All these factors make this story just shine, making this a highlight in the Doctor Who main range, full of wonderful imagery, incredible music to fit the scale of the story. I thoroughly enjoyed this story. The world building is excellent. The characters are just so interesting. There's so many great twists and turns within this story. It is just a really good listen. I really do recommend The Cry of the Vultriss. The Ice Warriors, again, because I'm a massive Ice Warrior fanboy, I love their inclusion because you never know if they're good or they're evil. It's just a really interesting story, and I love the Sixth Doctor Flip and Constance within it. It's just a really good story and a really good way to open this trilogy. So I'm going to give The Cry of the Vultriss, you know what, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I really did enjoy this story. It was a really good, solid listen. I really did enjoy it. So yeah, that concludes this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you on my next Big Finish review, whatever that will be. So thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.